Hi, my name's Elizabeth Rosemaneth. I'm a junior at Clark right now. I'm majoring in studio art and art history, and I have always loved art, and I especially really like to draw and paint and to do printmaking. So right now I'm doing like a directed study in woodblock printing, which is really interesting with watercolors.
Okay. My name is Grace Rumlitz. I'm a junior at Clark studying global environmental studies with a minor in film. And the art I like to do is like pencil and pen traditional drawings usually.
My name is Yona Brown. I'm a junior here at Clark University. I'm a community youth and education studies major with a studio art minor, and I'm a photographer.
I think honestly, it's helpful for me to make art. Like, I think while I'm making art, I always am in this kind of meditative state that's like, just feels like healthy. Like, it feels like a way for me to relax and like forget about other things that I have to think about. And I think I've gone through different stages of being like, oh, I need to make art for other people or like specifically about this one thing because I feel like I have to or something. And it's really the art that I just want to make for myself that's the most gratifying, I guess, I've found.
There isn't often times where I like get like a piece of paper and I'm like, I'm gonna make a thing, like an art, like I have a project. I have like tons of sketchbooks and I just kind of fill them up with drawings of really whatever I want to do, mainly like pen drawings and like pencil. And then sometimes like it's just hard because I don't have time, but like for classes and stuff, when I do get the opportunity to take them, I'll do art for those classes. And that's like a bunch of different mediums. Like I'm doing printmaking right now, and that's pretty fun. And like it is art. It's kind of academic though, but yeah.
The best way I can do, because like a photo is literally like showing people like how you view the world, and I feel like that's like there's a lot of power in being able to express yourself that way. And yeah, I feel like especially with like the portraits I take, I feel like that can do a lot for like a person, because like a lot of times like how we see a person is often different how like a person sees themselves. So like a lot of times when I take pictures of people and they're like, oh my god, the photos say come out so good, I'm like, of course they did. Like, I'm like, duh. But in like their mind, that's like not always the case, and it's like comforting.
I've taken plenty of like art and art history classes that have talked about like, oh, what is art? And have kind of like broken down my ideas at least of what I thought art was or what I thought an artist was, and given me a more like open view of it. And I'm sure my view will keep expanding as I keep having life experiences. And there's also, you know, like books I've read and things like that that have influenced my worldview, which everyone's worldviews are influenced by so many things, so it's hard to pick those things out. But I definitely think there's like, I don't know, so many ways to learn about these things and to like expand what you think is true in a way, which I really like. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For me, art, I guess, is just like a form of expression, and
I feel like I don't try to hold too firm of a definition to it.
I don't really know what art is. I feel like art can be anything, kind of. It's very like subjective, but I guess it's usually something that someone produces that is supposed to like be aesthetic in some sort of way. It doesn't have to be like a positive aesthetic or a negative aesthetic, if that even is a thing, you know?
I mean, I feel like anything can be art. I don't know, there's such like a distinction people make between like fine art or like high art and like craft and like, you know, just like graffiti or just like a doodle someone did. And I feel like the term art gets like applied to so many things, and you can have your own like personal definition for it. Like, I think you could take any object that was like, I mean, most things in our world are designed, and you can look at anything and be like, that's designed by someone, and so in a way you consider it art.
It has some sort of aesthetic value, and it makes you feel something, kind of, you know? It doesn't necessarily have to make you feel something, because there's like commercial art and things like that, but like that's kind of what it is, because art can kind of be whatever you want it to be.
I also think there can be a problem in like calling everything art, because art has like a specific definition that's been like set, especially in like Western art, that's been applied to like, you know, objects from ancient cultures and like all these other things that are saying like, oh, this is like specifically art, as opposed to like, I don't know, that people might not think it has a utilitarian purpose or things like that. Like, I think it's kind of interesting. Just the whole discussion about what is art is really interesting.
What would you say makes a piece of artwork good?
Well, this is interesting because I feel like I kind of it's kind of related to the question of like what is and isn't art. Like I feel like you can't really say there's good and bad art. Like I know like the professional art world will say this is good art, this is bad art, this is worth a lot, this is not worth anything. But I honestly think like it's up to each individual person's tastes. Like I might be like, oh, I really hate that, and someone else might really love it. It might be their totally their thing, and I think that's awesome. Like obviously there's things, and I can be like, I appreciate this being like something that someone put a lot of time into, and it just doesn't resonate with me. That's fine.
Good art, I think, is entirely dependent on like what you're able to take away from like the piece of art, because like I feel like there's often messages in pieces of art that like can often either be misinterpreted or just like completely missed, but I feel like the main purpose of art is to convey the message, and whether or not that's successful is like,
I feel like if there's like I don't even know, I was gonna say like a clear style throughout, it's hard because there's so many different types of art that are good. I feel like something that's like has like a flow to it, and like it has like a certain thing that you want, like it's like trying to accomplish, and you can tell that that's happening. Basically, I feel like art that you can see that there's effort into it, you know, that's put it, because like sometimes art, it doesn't necessarily have to be like good as in like realistic, you know, like I feel like that's what a lot of people think good art is if it looks like what it's supposed to be. But I guess but you know, something that's like stylized in a way that comes together well. I feel like composition is really important, you know, and that can come in many forms. You can have like composition that goes against each other, but even if it's going against each other, it's still going against each other together.
Good art doesn't have to be specifically supposed to spread positivity. Like I think it's great if it does that, but it can also just be something interesting or thought-provoking. Or it can be about nothing, you know? Like, I think art can be good even if it's not supposed to be sending any message, and it's just because the person who made it wanted to make it.
I don't know how commercialization affects the value of art. I feel like it depends on some things. Like, commercial art itself, art that's made to be commercial, I feel like that's fine, because I feel like it's almost like a separate industry. It's within itself. Because, like, just commercial art is kind of like everything. I feel like people don't realize that much. Like, logos, everything, like the way font is arranged on a website, that's technically art in a way. But I guess in more the negative idea of commercialization, I feel like there's a lot of decorative art. Like there's not a lot of casual art anymore. There's like either really just art that's in a museum, and then there's like crappy art you get at Marshall's, and that's kind of really, there's no in between. So like I feel like it's either you're super rich and you can afford like real artists, or you just can't afford art at all and you get like the most like reproduced thing at like Walmart or something. So I feel like there's not enough support for like local artists and things like that, because I mean if you get a painting that's just reproduced, I mean some of them are good, you know, those are the ones that are like in museums and you get prints of, I guess, but like yeah, I feel like art needs to be more accessible and unique, because I feel like you're not going to get good art unless you get it from different artists, you know?
it's like all advertisements and commercials are art in some sense. Like somebody had to video it, somebody had to take the time to like obviously like make it and craft it, but like a lot of it is commercialized, and is it a good thing? I don't know, but there's obviously like a lot of effort and art that goes into commercialism, and that's like, again, the whole message of commercialism is to get people to like consume your product. So a lot of it is like how you present your art.
I mean, it affects art hugely. Like, almost anytime you think about art these days, it's like, oh, how can you market that? How can you sell that? And even like I said earlier, like you could consider a lot of things art that are just like objects that people have designed. And those are all like, everything's under capitalism these days, you know? Like,
because all of it is like supposed to give some kind of value, and like the commercialism is trying to kind of exploit that in a sense.
I remember like as a kid, like I'd make a drawing and like I would show people the drawing. They'd be like, oh my gosh, you should sell that. Like, that's the first thing that comes to people's minds is like, oh, how can you profit off of that? And it's kind of strange because I love to make art, and I kind of feel like getting into the vein of like selling my art could be like toxic or it could be bad for me just to like have to be producing it in that way. And I think it can be good. Like, obviously people say do what you love, and a lot of people aren't able to do that, but if you can like find a way to like really love the art that you make and sell it and be like content in that kind of in the commercialization of your art, like I think that's a great way to go. It's a valid way to go. Personally, it's hard for me to like get into that because I feel like I want my art to be like free and not be like bound up by like what people would value it on a market or things like that. But I think like all art these days people will look at and try to like put a price on it, or they'll see art that's expensive and be like, oh my gosh, it's so expensive, why is it like that? You know, like people are always criticizing things like that, and like tying money to art is a really tricky thing. Like I think it's I don't love it, like just because it's applied to like everything nowadays, and not just art, but like everything's commercialized, and I think it does like put a bunch of restraints on it, on the things that you're like allowed to do or allowed to sell, or like how you value yourself and your art. Like it can be really difficult. So yeah, like I think there's ways to take advantage of the system with commercializing art, but there's also a lot of ways to get like screwed over. Yeah.
True.
So
Like, what are your goals for art? Like, what do you want to do, if anything?
I have no idea. Honestly, I don't really have a lot of, like, ideas of going into, like, visual mediums of art when I grew up in a professional sense. I feel like I'd always love to keep it as a hobby. Maybe as I get older, get into painting more or different types of, like, styles of art. But who knows? I mean, I really enjoy, like, film. I'm minoring in film. So maybe if that type of art became more prevalent in my life as I grew up, that'd be interesting. But honestly, I don't know. I feel like I would like art to always be part of my life. I just don't know if it'll ever become part of my life in a professional aspect. But I think that's kind of fine. But, you know, I'd like to just keep on improving is kind of the thing. Just keep on drawing, and then hopefully I'll just keep on getting better.
Yeah, because I feel like art doesn't have to be, you know, about money. Do you think like adding like a monetary value to something, do you think like that like puts unnecessary pressure on artists?
I think sometimes, yeah. I think it depends, because it's like it's kind of impossible for you to be an artist mainly in your life without selling it. And it's like, if you are an artist, technically, I guess like the main idea is like you make art to sell it. So I guess in some ways that does restrict it, because especially if you're starting out as an artist, like a very small time artist, you're mainly like making prints or things that you're like reproducing over and over again, and they're simple, because like what else are you gonna do? So I feel like it does constrict unless like you are in a situation where you're able to be like commissioned to work, or you're able to produce a painting and know that somebody is going to be able to buy it for the amount of hours that you put into it. So I feel like it's kind of like, it's a privilege to be able to make art with full creative freedom and get paid for it. So it does like put strain on you unless you have like specific circumstances.
I want to definitely do this like professionally, like more so like definitely get into it, because I do kind of do it professionally, like in the sense that like people like already pay me for like my photos and stuff, but like I definitely want to do like more like photographer job, whereas like people like I actually like want to like sit down and like take photos of people and like get like really paid for it. But like I also want to teach in a sense that like it's important to like pass like your skills on to like other people, and like I feel like that's like very important, and like I feel like encouraging other people to like, especially younger kids, to like express themselves like in the way that I did, because I started photography when I was like really young, and like I definitely would not have continued it if I did not have like the support I did. So I feel like it's definitely very important to like help kids, and like not like help kids but like encourage them.
So what kinds of art do you want to do in the future, or like do you want to try anything new, or do you
I want to try a lot of new things.
Yeah.
Like I think trying new things is the best way to go. Like, I think I had an idea when I was a kid, like, oh, if you're an artist, you have to find your style, you have to find one specific thing and stick to that and keep doing it. Because so many artists are known for one thing, and even if that's not the, like, if they didn't keep doing that for the rest of their life, or that was only one, like, phase in their life, that kind of becomes their, like, gimmick or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what my style is, you know? And now I'm like, oh, I do kind of have a style that's emerging, but I just want it to be fluid. I don't ever want to be, like, stuck in one thing. Like, and it's hard because people always say, what kind of art do you do? And I could say, oh, these are the things I'm doing now, but, like, I don't know, in the future, it'll probably change. Like, I would love to start doing things that are huge and maybe do things that are tiny, and, like, I should be free to do all of that, not be people like, well, you're all over the place, you're, like, changing your style so much, you know? I think I'll stick to things that I really like to do. I obviously do want to keep doing printmaking, doing painting, things like that. Gouache I really like too. And, like, sketching, like, those are things that I just always do and that are pretty easy to do, so I'll keep doing those. But in terms of, like, big projects, like, I want to take the ideas I have now and then just see where they go and just see what might inspire me in the future. I really don't know where it's going to take me, but yeah.
Do you think anyone can be an artist?
Yeah, anyone can be an artist. Everyone is an artist, you know? It's such a loose term. An artist is someone who makes art, and if art can be anything, then anybody can be an artist, you know? Food is art. Paintings are art, obviously. But, I mean, everybody in their life has made art, you know? It's kind of impossible not to. And I feel like everybody in their life will continue to make art, whether you, like, make a chair or something like that, you know? And there's no, like, requirement, you know?
Yeah, I do think anyone can be an artist. I think you could even argue that everyone is an artist. Like, again, that's another definition, like, art and artists we prescribe on people. But I actually remember that I was in an art class as a kid. I was in, like, first grade, and it was, like, this art class that the teacher just, like, taught at her house. It was all, like, first graders. It was very cute. We did, like, painting and stuff. And I was, you know, I was saying, like, oh, when I will grow up, I want to be an artist. And the teacher was like, you already are an artist. Like, you don't have to aspire to being an artist sometime in the future. You are an artist. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's amazing. You know, like, that changed my head around it. And so I think, like, honestly, everyone is creating things. Like, people are creators, and you might not think that you're creating art, but, you know, you write things and you doodle, or you, like, I don't know, put two things together, you fix something. You, like, people are makers. And I think, like, we tend to forget that, especially because now we're, like, all being trained to be consumers so much of the time that we forget that we have this amazing power to create. But I think it's, like, there, and it can't really be, like, erased. So I feel like everyone is inherently a creator and is an artist, even if they don't see themselves that way. And again, it's, like, based on, like, a narrow definition of what art is. And so then you could say, like, oh, you might be a great artist or something like that, which, again, is just definitions. But I feel like if you want to do something, you should go for it, and, like, nothing should hold you back, and you shouldn't be like, oh, I've been told I don't have talent or something like that. Like, you may not be talented in the one specific thing. Like, you might not be the best at, like, realistic drawing right now, and you could definitely, if you really want to be a realistic drawer, like, you could learn to do that. You could find books, you could take lessons or something like that, and I'm sure you could get really good at it because art takes hard work and not just, like, raw talent. But also, maybe realistic drawing was what you were told you were supposed to do, and maybe that's not what you want to do, and you want to just, like, I don't know, like, put safety pins together into a sculpture. Like, I don't know, there's something that might just, like, might be the thing that sets you free. That sounds so, like,
I like that.
pretentious. I don't know, but, like, there might be one thing that you just haven't found yet that, like, speaks to you. Or there might not be, and you might just play around with a bunch of things. Or you might just feel like, oh, I'm just uninspired. I'm just, like, not a person who has this ability or something. And I think it is there in everybody. But